Hello, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. Welcome to our online audience. We appreciate you being here as well. We've already talked to our in-person audience and gone over some rules, but thank you for being here. Thank you for being an informed and engaged voter. You are here. This is the League of Women Voters of the Pikes Peak Region Candidate Forum for U.S. House of Representatives, District 5. My name is Shelley Roars. I am the spokesperson for the League of Women Voters here in the Pikes Peak region. We are coming to you live from Pikes Peak Library number 21C, and our candidates joining us here this evening in alphabetical order. We have River Gasson, Joseph Gay, Christopher Mitchell, and hopefully joining us shortly will be Christopher Sweat as well, okay? So our moderators for tonight's forum, I'm just gonna actually just go ahead and turn it over to them, and they're gonna introduce themselves and get us started.
Hey, good evening. This is Kevin Porter. I'm with the Executive Director with Special Kids, Special Families. We're a nonprofit in town that advocates and provides services for individuals with disabilities, and I'm super proud that some of our clients are here volunteering today and participating in the election process.
Good evening. My name is Michael Williams. I'm the Executive Director for Citizens Project. We're a nonpartisan organization here in town that's been around 33 years and working on equity, inclusion, and justice and civic engagement.
All right, sorry. We're going to get right to the first candidate. River Gasson is going to give her 1-minute open statement, followed by Joseph Gay, then Mr. Christopher Mitchell, and we'll see if we can get Mr. Sweat in as well. Go ahead, Ms. Gasson. Your timekeeper will start 1 minute now.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for all being here today. I'm really excited to see so many familiar faces and so many new faces. And thank you for the League of Women Voters for hosting us today, and thank you for Library 21C for hosting us today. So I'm a scientist, I'm an educator, and I am also the Democratic nominee for Colorado's 5th Congressional District. My name is River Gasson, and part of the reason why I'm running, at least a huge motivator for why I'm running, is because after Roe v. Wade got overturned, I got really pissed off, to put it lightly. When I was 17, I remember my parents arguing over whether or not I should be on birth control, and I was uncomfortable right there. You know, you don't feel like you have a real say in what's going on, but that's when your parents are arguing for you. When Roe v. Wade got overturned, the entire country felt that discomfort. Complete strangers that we don't know are now negotiating over whether or not we should have the rights to our own bodies. And that's uncomfortable, it's unheard of, and now voting seems like a part of our birth control routine. I need to make sure that we have the ability to have our rights no longer up for negotiation on our ballots, and that's why I'm running.
Thank you. Joseph Gay.
My name is Joseph Gay. I'm an unaffiliated independent. I spent my professional career in space and defense. I worked at Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and GE Aircraft Engine Division. I'm running as an unaffiliated independent. In this congressional district, Colorado's 5th Congressional District, we are 52% unaffiliated independents, 16% Democrats, 29% Republicans. I feel that majority makes it our responsibility to stand up, step up, and speak up, and make our voices heard, and lead this community forward, not left, not right, but forward.
Thank you. And Christopher Mitchell.
Yes, thank you for coming out today. It's a great time to review your selections and voting. So my name is Christopher Mitchell. I'm affiliated with the American Constitution Party. I'm their candidate of choice this year for CD5. I'm an electrical engineering contractor. I work mainly in Department of Defense contracts. And I'm running on a platform of what we call limited government that is constitutionally focused. And my areas of passion are energy, the economy, and immigration. Those are those top issues for me, and that's why I'm running for this office. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates. Now we're going to go on to the candidate questions. Each candidate was given these questions ahead of time to prepare a 1-minute response. Your time will begin when I finish the question or when we finish the question.
The first question, we're going to go from Ms. Gasson to Mr. Gay to Mr. Mitchell. 1 minute. What experience do you have working with organizational budgets?
All right, well, thank you for this question. I actually didn't know we were given the questions in advance, so that's my fault there. Well, what experience I have is very limited. You know, I'm an educator, and I feel like what we need to have is education right now in the House of Representatives. Anyone is capable of working a budget, and that comes from being someone who has lived paycheck to paycheck, which is a majority of us at this point. 2/3 of this district is renting, and when you are needing to be frugal with your paycheck, you understand what is at stake. You understand what it's like to not necessarily have everything that you want to buy at the grocery stores and have to put things back or have to drive around with your gas tank on empty for a little bit. This is what you need to have in the House of Representatives because working people need to represent working people. We don't need to have career politicians. We need people who are new and have things at stake right now for our economy.
Thank you. Mr. Gay?
Before retiring from Lockheed Martin Space Systems, I was responsible for preparing and leading the Titan launch vehicle program on a $3.5 billion audit. On a $3.5 billion audit by the Air Force. The Air Force lead was a gentleman named Mr. Bill Hill. At the conclusion of the audit, it was a $3.5 billion add-on to the Titan launch vehicle program that was already a $5 billion program. At the end of that audit, Mr. Bill Hill told me that was the first time they conducted an audit of that magnitude and found 0 deficiencies. I shared this with you to let you know that I not only have an appreciation for national security, but also for fiscal responsibility. 0 deficiencies mean the budget was allocated in a fiscally responsible manner and it was being spent in a fiscally responsible manner. No fraud, waste, or abuse.
Thank you, Mr. Gay. That's 1 minute. Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you. I mentioned in my opening that I'm an engineering contractor, so that entails, one, I have to take care of my own finances for that contracting operation, but for each project I'm entrusted with, I have to manage a team of people, whether it could be engineers, new hires that we have from the college, and also I have to manage bill of materials. So I have what I call more or less a down, kind of like minimized or down in the operative level budgeting experience, not so much the macro level.
Thank you. Question 2. What activities do you support in the Colorado Springs and El Paso County communities? We're going to begin with Gay, then move to candidate Mitchell, and then candidate Gasson.
One of my favorite people in this community is Peggy Shivers. I go to all of her events, and I support her organization whenever I can. One of my other favorite people in this community is Miss June Waller. June Waller has spent her life dedicated unselfishly to helping people in the community, specifically Hillside, in an unselfish manner. And even at the late age she is in now, I marvel at the energy she has and the commitment she has to the community. Lastly, I support and have attended every event that David and Paulette Greenberg from the Greenberg Institute of Learning and Tolerance, and they're actually having a really important event 2 days from today,
Thank
talking
you.
about
Thank you, Candidate Gay.
diversity.
Candidate Mitchell?
Well, at the top of my list is the Veterans Center, Mount Carmel. I recently, a few months ago, attended one of their fundraisers down at Cowboys. It was just simply a great fundraising event for the organization, and Bob heads that up. And so I find that the Veterans Center is one of my top organizations that I want to be involved with, support in the community. And then, say more on a community level, I am very active in promoting what I call community efforts to take care of the green spaces here in Colorado. We have certain programs that are available through the city to help mitigate fire danger and so forth, but also just to spruce up neighborhoods. And so I'm actively involved in those type of programs too.
Thank you. Candidate Gasson?
Thank you. Well, I want to start off by talking about the amazing park and rec opportunities that we have here in our district. Part of why I'm running is because we need to conserve our water. Our district is running out of clean drinking water, and it's especially impacting our agricultural communities. What we need to do is prioritize the environment here, and this district is really known for its environment. Not only that, but this district is also known for an aging veteran population. And because we're not taking care of our veterans in the courtesy that we ought to be right now, we're actually suffering as a nation with our national security. Young people are less likely to join the military because they see in real time how our veterans are being treated. So we need to make sure that we are actively supporting and funding the VA and make sure they have all the resources they have, which is crucial for our district. And we also need to prioritize the environment here. We're built up against a mountain. We're built up against dwindling water supplies. We can't expand, and it's impacting our housing, it's impacting our security, and it's impacting our district.
Thank you. This next set of questions, we're going to start with Mr. Mitchell, then we're going to go to Ms. Gay, and then Ms. Gasson, then Mr. Gay. What plans do you have to communicate with your constituents?
Okay, first of all, I believe that El Paso County can do a whole lot better in terms of having a vision for the future. One of those is in energy, clean energy. Currently, our power plant downtown is running on natural gas, but I believe that there's a future for what they call SMR, which is small modular nuclear, that can be, that's way out on the timeline, but that is one thing that I would definitely champion in this position. And then I would also champion in this position the bringing more of a diverse aspect to our economy here in El Paso County, which, and I'll define that, we're based on service and DOD right now, and we need to diversify into more research and development type companies and the like in order to give ourselves a well-rounded competitive economy here.
Thank you. Ms. Gasson?
Would you mind repeating the question for me?
Yes. What plans do you have to communicate with your constituents?
Well, I do have a constituency plan laid out. Part of my campaign team is a member who is planning out a constituency plan with town halls within the district in the rural communities as well as here in the urbanized areas. Colorado Springs, Manitou Springs, Peyton, Black Forest, Fountain, and Cascade. We need to be able to make sure that we can connect with those areas of town with town halls so that way people can regularly talk and discuss with the issues that they have at mind. In addition, we're quite reachable with texting and quite reachable with emails, but I also plan on having a constituency outreach individual hired for each of the campuses in our district, the Air Force Academy, Pikes Peak State College, University of Colorado in Colorado Springs, and Colorado College, because I want to make sure young people also have a voice within the House of Representatives as well. Right now, young people have the most at stake, but they currently have the least say right now in our political system.
Thank you, Ms. Gasson. Mr. Gay?
Congress is out of session at least 1 week every month. If I'm elected to Congress, I will ask Mr. Ed Gleason, I don't know if anyone here knows him, but he was the president of the El Paso County Bar Association several years ago. I will ask him to draw up a legal contract that legally binds me to meeting with the constituents in this community one day a week, one day a month in that week when Congress is out of session. I met Mr. Ed Gleason 30 years ago when I first came to Colorado Springs. I haven't seen him or spoke to him in about 20 years, but he's a good guy, I trust him, and he was the coach of my 6-year-old son's flag football team when I first came to Colorado Springs in 1995.
Thank you. Question number 4 returns us to our original order, so we'll go Gasson, Gay, and Mitchell. The question is, name your top 3 priorities for the county, state, and country.
I'll start with the county. Our district is pretty much entirely contained within El Paso County. So our county is definitely a large military district. And like I've said earlier, we have a national security threat. We have recruitment at an all-time low, and it's because we're not treating our veterans with the respect and dignity that they've earned. We need to prioritize that. I want to have a secret shopper program within our VA that comes back to Congress with what questions were they asked, what kind of exams were they given, were they justified, and how quickly were they able to be met with care, especially when it comes to critical mental health resources. This is a top priority for our district, our county, and also the country. The other thing I want to prioritize is women's reproductive rights. Right now, the fact that our rights are up for negotiation every ballot is just unheard of. It's disgusting, quite frankly. And thirdly, we have to prioritize our environment. One of the committees I want to be on is the Committee of Natural Resources. This is because we need science to take the wheel on this one. Right now, we've seen what the rising temperatures have done in our south, and it's going to happen here when we run out of water supplies here.
Thank you. Candidate Gay?
For the county, my top priorities would be democracy. For the county, my top priorities would be housing, healthcare, and an economy that works for everyone. For the state, my top priorities would be housing, healthcare, and an economy that works for everyone. For the country, my top priorities would be democracy, national security, and an economy that works for everyone, in addition to reproductive freedom for women. I don't personally, if it was up to me, I would like there to be as few abortions as possible. But I believe a woman has the right to make her own healthcare decisions.
Thank you. Candidate Mitchell?
I mentioned it in my opening, energy, economy, and immigration, both for county and state. It's all inclusive to me. When we're talking about energy, we have challenges in terms of what I call transitioning from carbon-based energy forms to renewables. And I agree with River that science and engineering should be put at the forefront of that, but it should be something that's done methodically and logically with buy-in from, say, the governor and, say, Colorado Springs Utilities. And then we're talking about immigration. Well, Denver is affected by immigration policy, and we're affected by immigration policy. And so I'm looking at the fact that we're classified as a non-sanctuary county, whereas Denver is a sanctuary city. So we need to reconcile these differences in the Congress and come up with real solutions. And then with the economy, I think River touched on it. Once again, it's the bottom line every day of you're paying your bills and keeping a roof over your head.
Thank you.
Thank you. This next question, we'll start with Mr. Mitchell, then Ms. Gasson, then Mr. Gay.
Wait, was it?
Okay, Mitchell.
It's Gay. I'm sorry. Mr. Gay is first on this.
Mr. Gay, then Mr. Mitchell, then Ms. Gasson. My apologies.
Thank you, sir.
How do you plan to work with other layers of government?
In the previous question, I reply to how I would plan to communicate with my constituents. I would have monthly meetings with my constituents one day on that week when Congress was out of session. I would invite the mayor to those sessions. I would invite the 6 commissioners from the 6 districts to those sessions, and I would invite every state house, I would invite every assembly person from the Colorado State Assembly to participate in those sessions with myself, my constituents, and the mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Gasson. Mr. Mitchell.
Well, I'm going to go back to the immigration issue. Currently, we have the commissioners and the mayor of Colorado Springs on board with classifying us as a non-sanctuary county, and they're upholding that commitment. And I believe that our homelessness problem, although predominantly needed to be dealt with by the city, should also, there should be, I would gladly work with the mayor of the county cities that are resident within the county, and also the commissioners, to maintain what I call consistency of policy, so that we have, as a Congress person, I would have feedback on what's going on the ground, and that we can work together to make policy that's coherent and effective.
Thank you, Ms. Gasson.
Thank you. I think it's really important that we work with our local politicians. Part of this is going to be constant communication. I know on the party level, at least, within El Paso County, all of the Democratic candidates are in a group chat, and I think we can continue these efforts, but it will go beyond partisanship. I think we need to be able to be in constant communication with our county commissioners, our House district representatives, and our Senate district representatives, because it is ultimately the job of the congressional representative to provide funding for our district, and that is going to have to come down and be decided upon by our local representatives. Right now, I'm working with them and canvassing with them, and we're going to be able to continue to work together. It's obviously easier when we're all part of the same team, but here we do have a lot of different parties here. Democrats and Republicans will be working together, and I'll always put partisanship on the back burner when it comes to prioritizing the needs of our constituents.
So those are the end of our first 5 prepared questions from the candidates. We're going to continue on to our first it's not an audience question, actually. Your co-sponsors up here have 1 prepared question each. So we're going to let them, we're just going to continue on, if that's all right, candidates. We're good? Perfect.
Yeah, very, very proud to bring forth this question from our clientele. If elected, what will you be able to do specifically to ensure equal access to health care, education, and job opportunities for individuals with disabilities?
Mr. Mitchell is first, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell is first.
1 minute.
Okay, so in my opening, I referenced limited federal government. And I am a true believer that healthcare, education, and even abortion policy has no place at the federal level. And I'm just simply stating that, not out of an ideology, but out of my commitment to the Constitution and the 10th Amendment. So I am a true believer that, say, HUD, the Department of Education, abortion policy at the federal level is actually against the Constitution. And so I would revert that those topics be dealt with at the state level through the state legislature. And I'm just simply, like I said, I'm simply just stating that out of the fact that it is not an ideology, but it is a true belief that the Constitution does not enumerate those powers given to the United States government, including health care.
Thank you. Candidate Gasson?
Thank you. Well, I'm a firm believer that we should have a single-payer healthcare system. But as far as how we should help those with disabilities, one thing I've done in the past is I've worked with Representative David Ortiz to fight for an increase for how much a person can have in their savings if they are on disabilities. Because right now, $2,000 is not enough. You can't even buy a car with that much. And we were working and writing letters to our representatives up in DC to make sure we can have that increase to $10,000, which I still think isn't really enough. One of the committee assignments I hope to be on is the Committee of Education and Workforce. And one of the things we need to work on in our education system is making sure that kids with neurodivergencies or any kind of disability is treated with equality and respect, and that we have the resources in our public schooling system to make sure everyone has access and a level playing field to succeed. And we need to include this into our workforce as well.
Thank you. Candidate Gay?
As your representative in Congress, I believe we could talk about all the things we could do as individuals for these various policies. But the one and most important thing we could do is be true to our word. I was at a debate at the American Legion for Veterans just a few days ago. Gasson was there as well. And I was kind of appalled by the fact that Republicans that tell you how much they support veterans, they voted against the PACT Act. And if Republicans control the House of Representatives, they will probably try to cut Social Security and Medicare. What I can tell you is I would vote for all and any legislation that is for working class people and for disadvantaged people and for people that need health care.
Thank you.
I believe health care is a right, not a privilege.
Thank you. This next question will be 1 minute. We'll start with Ms. Gasson, then Mr. Gay, then Mr. Mitchell. How would you work across the aisle to bring solutions to El Paso County?
I actually really enjoy this question because as a scientist, my priorities is always going to be data. I am going to use the information that is given to us from experts in prioritizing the needs of our constituents. And that is going to be driven by numbers, driven by data, driven by research. That doesn't really have partisanship attached to it. The fact that Democrats happen to be the party that is more likely to believe in climate change seems to be a coincidence, and it's part of why I am a Democrat. But I'm always going to take good ideas and prioritize what is best for our people ultimately. The bipartisan immigration bill, for example, is one that I would improve, or one that I would vote yes on, because we do need more resources at our border. You can't just build a wall, walls don't work, and you need to be able to make sure that we have more border security agents, more asylum judges, more caseworkers, because right now they're overwhelmed, and we need bipartisanship in order to address these critical issues.
Thank you. Mr. Gay?
I'm going to reiterate that I will not tell you that I'm going to meet with and make myself available to my constituents. I will have Mr. Ed Gleason, the previous president of the El Paso County Bar Association, draw up a contract that will legally obligate me to meet with my constituents once a month, and that's not just the constituents, but the leaders of the community, the state assembly, House, Senate, as well as the mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Mitchell?
One area which I've mentioned several times already is clean energy development. And I also emphasize a logical, methodical progression. So in that regard, I actually believe River and I are on the same page. And if I was elected to Congress for this position, I would definitely be one to lead the charge to gather Democrats, Republicans, anybody who wants to go on a tour of a nuclear facility and see the potential that could be unlocked through nuclear power or further develop our natural gas resources. I would gladly work in a bipartisan way on energy development but I will emphasize, I will not entertain fanaticism that's associated with climate change in that process. I will focus on real, tangible solutions.
Thank you.
This will be our first 30-second question of the night. We'll begin with candidate Gay, then Mitchell, then Gasson. Please describe as quickly and as eloquently as you can why you're different from your opponents, both on the stage and not.
Because I'm running as an unaffiliated independent. El Paso County has 52% unaffiliated independents because, quite frankly, we are tired of the divisiveness and the, well, let me put it this way. Our politics and our economy is making our country and our community sicker, poorer, and less tolerant of each other. And I think the community's had enough of that.
Thank you. Candidate Mitchell?
Well, it's been clear to me tonight that the other two candidates here, I respect their point of view. However, they are big government, expand government people. They both have just said they want to vote for larger programs, more safety nets at the expense of raising taxes and the regulations on the American people. I am about limited federal government, less regulation, less taxes, and unlock the potential of American people to prosper without being burdened with more taxes and more regulations.
Thank you. Candidate Gasson?
Thank you. Well, in addition to being different from the other candidates here on this stage, I'm also different from the candidates who have ran for this seat in the past. And I wouldn't have ran for this seat if I saw someone who was like me that resembled my ideologies. I'm the first woman to run for this seat since Roe v. Wade's been overturned. But we're also unlocking some history. I'd be the youngest person elected out of the state of Colorado to serve at the House of Representatives. I think young people have shown that they are looking for someone who voices their opinions here for this district. And since we have 4 major schools, 3 major universities here, it's come time that we have young people become represented.
Thank you.
The next question is an audience question, or online question, so thank you to our online audience. This question will be 1 minute. We're going to start with Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Gasson, and Mr. Gay. What do you think you can do to help Colorado catch up with funding, with infrastructure, and our rapid growth?
Well, once again, part of my opening statement, I included economy. And we have to keep developing our economy, but we also have to look at a balance. Like I said before, that economy is based upon a combination of energy, regulation, and taxes, and finding the right balance between those 3. And I feel that in order to achieve greater economic prosperity for this state, we have to focus on the taxes, lowering the taxes, and focusing on our energy development. And I would gladly work with anyone who will work with me on the energy sector to improve our bottom line in this state so we can then have extra money for that infrastructure and to keep feeding that back into our development as a state.
Thank you. Ms. Gasson?
Thank you. Well, I do adopt a Keynesian economic model. The data has indicated that models have indicated that when individuals who are currently paycheck to paycheck have more money to spend, that money is spent in our economy. Whereas when the wealthier percentage of the population, that top 1%, has more money, that money is put into their savings. It's not put back into our economy. This is why we need to make sure that we tax the ultra wealthy. This is why we need to tax billionaires and leave the middle class alone. This is why we need social safety nets for those who don't currently have all of the resources that they need to feed their families. This is why we need some social safety nets to make sure everyone can progress within our economy. And this is why we need to prioritize taxing the wealthy and not the poor.
Thank you, Ms. Gasson. Mr. Gay?
Wealth is creating wealth at an accelerated pace, and the working class is getting left behind. The economic policies responsible for creating this environment has been normalized by Democrats and Republicans. There are too many people in this community that are working 2 jobs to make ends meet. There are too many people living paycheck to paycheck. And I think most of the people most of the leaders in this community have lost sight of the fact that for 10 years, this community has been suffering from cost of living increases due to rapid population growth. We've been struggling with that long before the COVID-related inflation that everyone is talking about now. In 15 years, Colorado Springs is going to be the biggest city in the state of Colorado. People who live and work here today won't be able to live here tomorrow. We need to take.
Thank you, Mr. Gay.
All right, so that, we're going to take a quick break for the candidates. When we get back started, Ms. Gasson, I believe you are up first, Mr. Gay, then Mr. Mitchell. We're going to take a short break as we introduce some of our co-sponsors. We could not do this without them. Our media co-sponsors include Studio 809 Podcasts and Longmire Audio Engineering, both of them right back in the back of the room. Shout out to you guys. They are bringing you sound and visuals for tonight's forum, and so thank you again to those joining our online audience. They make us look and sound great. KOAA Channel 5 and KRCC Public Radio, also our media sponsors. Other co-sponsors include AARP, Black and Latino Leadership Coalition, Citizens Project, Colorado Latinos Vote, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Latina Equity Foundation, NAACP Colorado Springs, also in the house, Pikes Peak Diversity Council, Special Kids, Special Families, and Together Colorado, Colorado Springs Faith Table, also in the house. I know you guys are here with us this evening. So thank you so much to all of those. I do not believe I was told any elected officials, right? No elected officials in the room with us this evening. Other than that, League promo table, make sure you check it out. We got a lot of great stuff coming up. And we are a member organization. Always students are free, so if you are a student, please come join us, and we would love to see you. All right, that's it for me. Turn it back over to your moderators.
All right, as a reminder, candidate Gasson, then Gay, then Mitchell for our, I believe, 10th question of the night. This has some news relevance as we have a large hurricane out there in the Gulf of Mexico. Curious, and this is a 2-minute response time. Curious if you believe in climate change as an urgent issue, and if so, what kind of policies would you promote to address the issue?
This is an absolutely critical question. Yes, I believe in climate change. And while I do understand that not everyone does, the fact of the matter is that we need to prioritize what science says. So in my classes, when I talk about climate change, I often show the model of how much CO2 is in our atmosphere and how much CO2 has been in our atmosphere for the last 1,000 years or so. I then show the model of the average temperature of our planet. And while, yes, our planet does go through 12-year cycles of rising temperature, decreasing temperature, what we have seen in the last 200 years is a sudden spike in that temperature that is directly proportional to the amount of CO2 that is in our atmosphere. And you don't just see that model on Earth. This is true of all planets within our solar system, but Earth is the only one that has had a sudden spike in CO2 in the last 200 years. So the science just is very clear that climate change is real. We also have seen Hurricane Milton jump from a Category 1 to a Category 5 overnight. That's not normal. It's not normal to have 2 hurricanes over the course of a week hit one state. This is not normal. The rising temperatures is what is causing the hotter water within our Gulf of Mexico, and that hotter water is less dense, it is faster, it is increasing in speed, and it is directly proportional to the cause of hurricanes. Hurricanes are needed, they need hot temperature in order to form. The rapidness of these hurricanes and how fast they're forming and the categories and the increase of their badness, so to speak, is happening because of the rising temperatures. And people are dying. The death toll is in the triple digits, with over 1,000 people missing. And with Hurricane Milton hitting a very populated area in Florida, I think even more people are going to lose their lives. This is a life or death situation. When climate change is as forefront as it is right now, nothing else matters. If our homes are on fire, nothing else is going to matter to us. People are dying. This is a life or death situation. And we need to prioritize our climate right now. We need to prioritize our environment. It is absolutely the most important issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Gay.
2 important issues two important points I want to make on this. I hope I have time for both of them. Our climate policy conflicts with our national security policy. Our national security policy is to strangle Russia's economy, and their economy is oil and gas. They're selling more oil and gas to our European allies now than they did before. We could be selling oil and gas to our European allies, but our restrictions prevent us from doing that. It makes no sense. We need to work more productive. Well, we need to figure out what we're doing. We can't have a conflict like that because this war in Ukraine will last forever as long as Russia is able to continue selling oil to our allies. I believe in climate change. I believe it's real and that we need to do something about it. But in this particular case, I think we should increase natural gas production so that we could provide the energy that our European allies need, so we could prevent Russia's economy from continuing to thrive because we conflict with our climate policies here. But also, you can't just throw money at an issue. We've allocated almost $800 million to EV machines to charge electric vehicles. Almost 3 years ago, we've completed 3. I would like to audit that program that's projected to have 500 electric vehicle stations in 5 years, when in the last 3 years, they've only did 2. I'd like to see how that money was baselined. Who's ever responsible for that should be fired.
Thank you. Candidate Mitchell?
Thank you. I appreciate River's analysis. I appreciate scientific investigation. But there's another aspect to this. It's called engineering. And in Idaho, there's a National Research Laboratory that exists for developing practical, and the key word is practical, clean energy solutions that are evolving as we speak. And the country of France is leading the way in nuclear. There's 70% nuclear in France, and they only rely on 8% of wind and solar. So the trend in France is toward nuclear. And I'm using France as a case study of a methodical engineering endeavor that has a national priority. So I believe it should be our national priority to come up with alternative forms of clean energy. And as in Congress, I will drive that and make that a priority to build a coalition of people that will stand behind it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This question will be 1 minute, and we'll start with Mr. Gay, then Mr. Mitchell, then Ms. Gasson. I got myself together again. Regarding mental health and community health, how do you plan to address the disproportionality of crises faced by minority groups and youth?
Mental health is a huge issue, not only for youth. This was a subject that came up in the veterans debate last week. We talk about these things in front of minority youth, in terms of minority youth, in terms of veterans, in terms of young kids, in terms of homeless people. But we need to address this in terms of the community as a whole. If we can allocate the resources to address it, period, I would be for whatever resources and for whatever programs that are on the table. I would seriously consider them, because we have a serious mental health crisis. And for that reason, I am not on any social media. I was embarrassed when the Biden administration decided to go on TikTok.
Thank you, Mr. Gay. Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you. My answer is very short. This type of service or should be pushed onto the state as a state responsibility. I don't see this type of service or program base being implemented at the federal level. I'm running for a federal office, so I would defer that service and that question for state representatives.
Thank you. Ms. Gasson?
Thank you. We do have a mental health crisis in this country. People of color are disproportionately impacted, and right now, we all need to do better as a nation. We can do better. We need more resources for mental health. And not only that, but when you just need to know what your diagnosis is, you just need to know what resources are available, so that way you can be even begin to be on a level playing field. But right now, what we have is a lot of people who are suffering from mental health might be subject to police brutality, and police are currently just not trained at handling any mental health crisis. The STAR program that we have in Denver is something that can be applied on a federal level. This is where you have mental health resources that come out when there's a 911 call that really doesn't really involve the police. And it has cut down on the amount of police use in Denver. We can have this on the federal level. I don't know the exact numbers of how fewer police have been called out, but it is pretty significant. And additionally, we need to make sure mental health resources are available in public schools. Teenagers especially are at risk of suffering from depression and anxiety, and we need to make sure that the counselors are funded and that the resources are there.
Thank you, Ms. Gasson. Mr. Gay? Oh, so sorry.
It's okay.
I can finish. TikTok was,
No,
Our-
sorry.
That was my apology.
Our next question comes from the audience. We'll begin with candidate Mitchell, then Gasson, and then Gay. What can you share with us about your family or your personal upbringing that shaped your opinions and the way you shaped your platform?
That's a very easy question to answer. Abortion is a very difficult topic to discuss because there's both sides of the issue. But in 1944, my grandmother was advised by her doctor to terminate my father, just simply because the pregnancy was a threat to her health. And my grandmother's response was, "No way, I'm not giving it up." And so she chose to muscle through the difficulties, even defying her own doctor that was advising her to terminate my father. And I'm here today because she muscled through that, and that's why I'm pro-life across the board, from fertilization to natural death. So that's a real-life experience and how it's affected my view on politics.
Thank you. Candidate Gasson?
Thank you. So for my family, education has been our pathway to the middle class. I'm a third-generation educator. My grandmother was a preschool teacher in Kansas at a school called Holy Cross, and my mother was a preschool teacher in the Cherry Creek School District, and I work at the University of Colorado in Colorado Springs. Education has been key to our family's success because it's one thing that no one can ever take away from you. In the recession in the early 2000s, when our family lost our home, when our family was worried about getting food on the table, when I had to be creative in making my school lunches and figuring out that I can use hamburger buns to make a sandwich when we were out of bread. This is because our family has prioritized education. The fact that I had 2 working parents kept us alive through the recession. And this is what has shaped me as a person, someone who knows that education is the predominant value that can get us all out of difficult times. And it's also, what just makes people not manipulated and easily persuade into cults. An educated population is a powerful population.
Thank you. Candidate Gay?
could you repeat the question, please?
I sure can. I wanted you to talk about think about your family or personal upbringing that helped shape your positions or your platform.
While I was working at Lockheed Martin in 1999, I went to the funerals of 3 kids that died in the massacre at Columbine High School. I own guns. I am not against guns. but I believe a civilized society should have civilized gun laws. And while I was out collecting signatures to get on the ballot, some of the most engaging and touching conversations I had were with women expressing their views about abortion. I am pro-life, and if I get pregnant, I will have the child. But I don't have the right to tell a woman
Thank you.
what to do with her body.
Thank you. This question will be 1 minute. We're starting with Ms. Gasson, Mr. Gay, then Mr. Mitchell. One of the fastest rising costs in the country is healthcare. What plans would you have to help ease that burden for families?
Thank you. So I'm actually a recipient of Medicaid. When Joe Biden expanded the Affordable Care Act, this included me, who was a work-study recipient at the University of Colorado in Colorado Springs. I was a graduate student who didn't have their parents' health insurance anymore because I was still in school, but also didn't have the ability to get health insurance myself. I was able to figure out that I was at risk of anemia. I was able to figure out that I had gingivitis. So many of my friends who were also graduate students had health care for the first time in years. Health care should not be a privilege. It should be a human right. And with that, I support a single-payer healthcare system. We need to expand the Affordable Care Act for families who have kids. We need to expand Medicaid for individuals with a lower income. And we need to incentivize people to continue to work on themselves and have an increased paycheck by not taking away Medicaid simply because you're making more money. We need to make sure that everyone has health insurance, and we need to do this with a universal healthcare system.
Thank you, Ms. Gasson. Mr. Gay?
I'm going to go back and apologize for the remark about if I get pregnant, I'll have the child. That was supposed to be a joke. I guess it didn't go over too well. But anyway, on health care. Health care is the #1 reason for people going into bankruptcy. And the fact that we have so much. In the last 10 years, wealth has been creating wealth at an accelerated pace. And the working class has been getting left behind. Capitalism is the best economic system in the world, but we can and must make it work for all of us. There's no reason why people have to go bankrupt and die for lack of health care. In this country, that shouldn't be happening. We have the resources and the wherewithal to eradicate that. We just need to have the will.
Thank you, Mr. Gay. Mr. Mitchell?
Except for veteran services, which I feel the federal government does have a contract and an obligation to fulfill. Healthcare services policy does not belong, from my standpoint of the Constitution, does not belong at the federal level, and that includes the ACA. I know a lot of people would be upset to hear that from me, but that's the truth, is that there's no clause, there's no article in the Constitution that says the government shall provide a health care program, services. But like I said, I have the exception that we will provide veteran services of health care at the federal level.
Thank you. This next question, 90 seconds. And we'll begin with candidate Gay, then candidate Mitchell, and then candidate Gasson. Would you share your thoughts on any of the ballot issues on the current ballot and why you feel that way?
I'll talk about ranked choice. I think it's a good idea, but I think we're not ready for it. We have a hard enough time getting people out to vote as it is, and half the people that vote, and I don't know if this is a good or bad thing, but half the people that vote, they kind of know what Democrats stand for, and they kind of know what Republicans stand for. But as I understand it, ranked choice doesn't identify you as a Democrat or a Republican. So I think it's going to result in a smaller percentage of the population voting because they're not going to do the homework to find out what these people stand for. Even today, I think a big part of the problem with our democracy is too many people don't vote. And at least they know to some degree what a Democrat stands for, and they know what some degree what a Republican stands for. I think we need to build up an unaffiliated independent party because I think we're a microcosm of what the rest of the country is going to be. I think we can be the first congressional district to send an unaffiliated independent to Congress. But I guarantee you, we won't be the last because this is where the whole country is moving. They're moving in this direction. They're divorcing themselves from the two major parties.
Thank you. Candidate Mitchell?
I'll select the ranked choice voting issue. First of all, I'm against it because empirical data says it doesn't work very well. Alaska is now is revoking it. They tried it, didn't work out. They hated the system. And intuitively, as a third-party candidate, I love the look and feel of going to an assembly, giving a speech, and trying to win votes to be someone's candidate. And even though people may feel that the two major parties have too much power, I still think the assembly processes for each of those parties, Democrats and Republicans, is sufficient for what we're doing here in this state. And I would rather not experiment with things that haven't worked in other states. So that's how I feel.
Thank you. Candidate Gasson?
Thank you. So as a pro-choice candidate, I'll go ahead and talk about a proposition on our current ballot that is very close to my heart. Proposition 89 is one that I've helped get onto the ballot. I've walked doors. I've collected signatures. I helped Cobalt and make sure that we can have the right and access to abortion and the health care needed around it constitutionally protected here in the state of Colorado. And while I do trust that Colorado will pass that proposition, I want to make sure that we can have that protected on the federal level as well. I'm very grateful that Colorado is a state where we can make sure our health care is protected. But I have a friend who had to deny a job opportunity in Florida because she didn't believe that was a state where she could be safe. Right now, women are limited to our states, and it shouldn't be up to the states as to whether or not we have access to health care. We need to make sure that it is only up to the patients and the doctors as to what decisions should be made. And that's why I supported Proposition 89. That's why I worked to get it on the ballot. That's why I knocked doors. That's why I collected the signatures. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is going to be the last question before we. Oh, this is going to be the second to last question before. Whether you win or, and we're going to start off, this is going to be Mr. Mitchell, then Mr. Gay, then Ms. Gasson. Whether you win or lose, how are you going to help the community unify instead of being divided? It's 1 minute.
Okay. Well, I'm a firm believer that in politics, you just have to be a good sport about everything. And I've looked over River's website, and there's a lot of stuff I wouldn't agree with, but there's some things I would agree with. And I could see myself working with her if she was elected and she needed a good engineer to talk about clean energy. That would be me, and I'd gladly have that discussion in a very civil way. And so I believe we can find those areas that we agree on. Like, for example, I think River and I would agree on the quest for clean energy. And we're both scientific, engineering-minded people, so that would be what I call a unifying factor. And so basically, when the election's over, you have to move on, and you have to put any kind of grievance behind you, and just do the best you can with what you have.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Gay?
I appreciate Mr. Mitchell said when the election is over, you just need to move on. I wish that would be the case. But unfortunately, I believe if Trump wins this election, we cannot allow him to have control of all three branches of government. He'll be the president. He already has the Supreme Court. We cannot allow him to have control of Congress. And that's part of the reason why I'm running for Congress as an unaffiliated independent. The truth be told, El Paso County is not going to elect a Democrat for Congress. If you're a Democrat, I ask you to vote for an unaffiliated independent that can win. If you're a Republican and you care about democracy, I would ask you to not send a man to Congress who will be a loyal soldier in the army of a party that does not believe in democracy, the rule of law, or the peaceful transfer of power.
Ms. Gasson, I think you're up.
Thank you. While I do have to disagree with Mr. Gay, I do believe a Democrat will win. You know, El Paso County is not going to be red forever. And if I win, you know, Kamala Harris is going to need a Democratic majority in order to get things done. And if Donald Trump is unfortunately the winner, we're going to need to make sure that we protect our democracy at all cost. And we're going to need a Democratic majority in the House in order to do that. So obviously, you guys know what I'm going to do if I win. But the question also asked if I lose. And if I lose, I want to know, I want feedback as to how I can improve as a candidate and how I can improve my campaign, because I have every intention of running again for a 2026 campaign.
That's okay. Thank you. You took my last question. Thank you very much for doing that. So we'll switch here. You have 30 seconds. We're going to start, I believe, with candidate Gasson, then Gay, then Mitchell.
Sorry, Gay, Gasson, Mitchell.
Gay, Gasson, Mitchell.
Gay, Gasson, Mitchell, correct.
For the final question.
Correct.
All right.
This is your final question. Candidate Gay is first, then Ms. Gasson, then Mr. Mitchell.
And this is not the closing statement, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Just last, final question.
So we all want our politicians to have ideas of how they can pay for their priorities. So very succinctly, how will you pay for your political priorities or policies?
I believe, as I said, wealth is creating wealth at an accelerated pace, and the working class is getting left behind. I think we need to tax billionaires. I would, if I get elected to Congress, as an unaffiliated independent, not part of any of the two existing political structures, I would work with a group called Patriotic Millionaires and Millionaires for Humanity. And I would try to get them, I would enlist them as I try to.
Thank you. Candidate Mitchell, 30 seconds.
I'm going to focus more on being a hawk for reducing government waste. And I have made it very clear tonight that I have a very clear vision of what should and shouldn't be at the federal level according to the Constitution. But I also opened this discussion with the fact of budgets and running projects. And the one thing I look at our government right now is both the Republicans and the Democrats are wasteful spenders on many projects and many things.
Thank you. Candidate Gasson.
Thank you. So I'm going to be a copycat here for a second and talk about Elizabeth Warren's economic policies and her plans for taxing the wealthy. I like her policies, and I like how she has structured everything so that way the middle class and the working class are not being taxed as high, and we can tax the billionaires. The more money you make, the more you should pay into our economy. And right now, individuals who make less money, who are paycheck to paycheck, are paying more and putting more into the income tax and paying more into the taxes of goods and services as well. I'm also going to thank my friend Steve over here who wrote me I can't talk anymore, sorry.
Thank you.
That is the end of our audience-driven questions. We're going to now ask each candidate to finish with their closing statement. We're going to go Mr. Gay, then Mr. Mitchell, then Mr. Gasson for 1 minute.
introducing me first?
Candidate Gay.
Candidate Gay.
If you're a Democrat and you really believe Trump is the threat to democracy that you say he is, I ask you to have the serenity to know what you can change, the courage to change it, and the wisdom to know the things you cannot change. If you're a Republican, it kind of boggles the mind, and I'm going to go back to the veterans debate that I was at a few days ago when we had Jeff Crank sitting at the table next to us, and they talked about the PACT Act. Republicans voted against the PACT Act, but this veteran community will continue to vote for a Republican. This veteran community
Thank
couldn't
you.
even do a veterans parade.
Thank you, Mr. Gay.
They don't support veterans.
Mr. Mitchell, 1 minute.
So, in summary, I'm a very limited government person. I really believe in efficiency and streamlining. That's the way I run my life. That's the way I run my contracting business. That's the way I run projects. I have to in order to be successful. And I believe government should be the same way. Republicans and Democrats have failed the American people. The Republicans have had the majority in the Congress for 2 years, and they can't get anything done. Why? Because they're infighting and destroying each other, just like they are here in Colorado. So I used to be a Republican, and thank God I'm not anymore. I feel very comfortable in my own skin in the party I'm in, and I will take it to the Democrats, and I will take it to the Republicans. There is no rubber stamp from me if I'm elected to this office. Even though the Republicans would be closer to what I believe, I will not always
Thank you,
give
Mr.
them right
Mitchell.
away.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Ms. Gasson, 1 minute.
Thank you. So I want to take a second to talk about how historic of an opportunity we have. Doug Lamborn was our representative for 18 years. A generation of people have been born and are now old enough to vote against him. And what has he accomplished in those 18 years? He got us a cemetery. I plan on taking care of people while they're still alive. I also want to outline that this is an opportunity for change and growth, not just in this district, but for our country. I remember watching the inauguration of Barack Obama when I was younger and feeling so proud to be an American. The fact that we as a nation were moving on to the next chapter, we were looking at our past and saying, we know we're better, we know we can do better. And this election, we're going to elect the first woman president, the first woman of color, nonetheless. And this is the next chapter of our country. An entire generation of young girls are going to look up and say, I can be that person too. This is an election where young people are going to look up and say, this is the next chapter. This is a country that I feel represented in. And this is a very historical opportunity that I want us all to take a second and acknowledge.
Thank you, candidates. Can we get a round of applause for our candidates, please?
So thank you, candidates. And before we close this out, I want us to all, you all that are here, obviously, I'm assuming you're going to be voting, right? We work for these organizations that do civic engagement. But something that I don't think it's fair to assume is that we all realize the power we have to get others to vote, right? The League of Women Voters, Citizens Project, some other organizations do a lot of work and a lot of effort to get people to vote, but you have a sphere of influence of maybe 5 to 10 people that maybe they haven't voted, or maybe they think it's not important, but every election is critical, presidential election, off-cycle elections, et cetera, and we would encourage you to encourage the folks around you to vote. Ballots drop this Friday, the 11th, right? So blue books should be out already, right? If you didn't get a blue book, possibility that your ballot might have an issue, so you can talk to the league or you can talk to Citizens Project and we can get you the resources to get that fixed. But do vote and do vote early so the count's not backed up. It was the ask from the county clerk. So Thank you all for attending, and make sure you vote.
All right, that wraps up our live and virtual forum for the U.S. House of Representatives Colorado District 5 Candidate Forum. We thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you, candidates. We know your time is precious from knocking on doors, so we greatly appreciate you as well. These recordings are available on the League of Women Voters of the Pikes Peak Region website at lwvppr.org, on our YouTube channel under Live, and on the League's Making Democracy Work podcast. Thank you for joining us virtually as well. Thank you for being an active and engaged voter. We appreciate you all. Oh, I'm sorry, candidates, stay for a picture, please. The 3 candidates up on the stage, stay for a picture.